Imagine this, $25,000 on the line. The highest stage of Pokemon. After 17 rounds of Pokemon TCG, totaling close to 18 hours worth of gameplay in one weekend. Hundreds more testing and practicing. You finally compose yourself, but deep down you know that thousands of people are watching at home via the live stream. Just one game, one person in the way of your place in Pokemon history. You're so close to that Pokemon World Championship title you can almost taste it, but now it's time. You've taken a deep breath in. Compose yourself as your opponent flips over their active Pokemon to start the game. Wait, what? Welcome to my Making the Case series, where I try my best to convince you what the strongest card for card Pokemon is in the Pokemon trading card game. This means we not only have to take into account the best cards from that Pokemon, but the stinkers too. I've narrowed it down to 10 Pokemon I believe can honestly be given this title. And after that, it's up to you to decide which Pokemon you think deserves the crown. So today I'm making the case for Genesect being the strongest Pokemon in TCG history. Genesect is a funny one because I know what you are all thinking immediately. And yes, you are kinda right. Genesect has only really had two amazing cards. And while this is very true, the nature of this Making the Case series is that you have to take the highest of highs and the lowest of lows of a Pokemon's cards and then balance it out. So I'm here to tell you right now the highest of highs for Genesect, oh well, pretty damn high. I'm sure you're a bit skeptical, and I don't blame you, but that's the fun part about Making the Case series, is that it's not up to me to choose, that's up to you. I just get to put the case across. Genesect has been featured on 12 different cards since it debuted in Plasma Blast. Let's look at this triple pack blister promo first, and while the card looks amazing, it did exactly nothing in a competitive metagame. While its Team Plasma tag would have been extremely helpful since Plasma had a couple dominating archetypes back in 2013, this had no place in them. You could make it usable via energy attachments and Colress machines, but Signal Beam was next to useless while Floatstone was in the format, and Overdrive Smash is laughable with 180 damage over 2 turns for 4 energy. But luckily for Genesect fans all over the world, there was another Genesect card that came out in 2013, and no, it wasn't that one, that was infinitely better than these two bulk cards. It's hard to accurately describe just how devastating Genesect EX was in the 2013 metagame. So let's just start with the basics. Well, it's a basic, but there are another 5 things that made Genesect EX bonkers. 170 HP looks low by today's standards, but back in 2013 that was right in line with the main attackers of the format. 1 retreat cost was also amazing for the time too, since Sky Arrow Bridge existed. This allowed for Genesect EX to be a free retreat pivot for the whole game, without the need of Keldeo Floatstone combo, saving deck space. Megalo Cannon was actually decent too. For 3 energy it was slightly more costly than you would like, but 100 with a 20 damage snipe was bang on for 2-shot and everything in the format. And this even dealt with another tier 1 deck at the time, Keldeo Blastoise, since Keldeo was weak to grass and so was Blastoise, meaning Megalo Cannon would deal with them nicely. But if this was Genesect GX's only option though, I doubt I would be making this video, not gonna lie. But you see, the Plasma Blast expansion had 2 A-Spec cards, both tool cards, that when they were attached to Genesect EX would give Genesect a new attack. Let's look at them. The first one was G-Scope, and it allowed Genesect to do an 100 damage snipe. This wasn't too bad actually, allowing a Genesect player to dispatch a Jirachi EX just chilling on the bench, or any other bench sitters like Electrode or Garbodor even. KOing the latter would give you back abilities too, which is pretty important, we'll get to that later. But while G-Scope was an option, it was an option that was rarely chosen, since, well, unfortunately Mr. Mime did exist, with its bench barrier ability making G-Scope absolutely useless. Not only that, but there was another ace spec in Plasma Blast which was head and shoulders always the correct option. And it wasn't even close. G-Booster is what made Genesect EX an absolute table destroyer. This let you one-shot everything in format for 3 energy. So Lugia EX, gone. Black Curum, gone. Other Genesects even, gone. Not only that, but the extra text on G-Booster would allow you to go through all effects on your opponent's active. This means you could shred your way through Suicune, which some Kyoto decks would often play to be a bit of an irritant. When paired with Virizion EX from the same set, you now had a beat stick that when loaded could blow its way through anything in format. And Virizion EX's Emerald Slash would be the perfect energy accelerator for Genesect. And I haven't even touched on Genesect's best part yet in my opinion. Its ability, Red Signal. When you attach a plasma energy from your hand to Genesect EX, you can swap your opponent's active Pokemon. This would allow you to be extra clinical with your Megalo Cannons to pick up cheap, easy prizes, or allow you to KO big threats your opponents was setting up, like a Lugia EX or a Black Curum EX. Might not sound as mind-boggling as G-Booster, Red Signal was a crazy form of Gust, since when XY came out, TPCI actually errated Pokemon Catcher to now require a coin flip to operate. This left players having to play a couple copies of Lysandre to switch their opponent's active. Apart from Virgin, that is. This put Virgin in a league of its own, allowing Virgin players to max out consistency supporters like Skylar with the space save from not having to play Lysandre. This also let Virgin players have some slower tempo supporters like Shadow Triad too, which would allow you to recover G-Booster or any plasma card if it ever hit the discard pile. And in hindsight, it was very obvious that Virgin really was in a class of its own, because at the 2014 World Championships, 5 of the top 8 slots were occupied with Virgin deck, even though Yveltal decks were the most popular in day 2, with 15 of them equating to 47% of the meta. However, of the 9 Virgin players, 5 of them made top 8, proving that it was the true best deck in format with over a 50% conversion into top 8. This has only ever happened one other time in Pokemon World Championship history, 2012. But not only that, due to all the previous factors mentioned, and the raw aggressiveness of Virgin meant that it actually met itself in the finals in a mirror match. Something that's only ever happened once too in Pokemon World Championship history, with Andrew Estrada taking it all home. The dominance doesn't stop there though for Virgin, even though it has taken Pokemon's highest stage, because it went on an absolute rampage before and after those World Championships, clocking in 3 national wins and a couple ECC wins as well, with the German nationals being extremely pertinent since all top 4 decks were Genesect decks. Genesect's ability was so strong that it was even seen in other decks solely for that reason, such as this Plasma Palkia deck, where the win con was to strafe into Plasma Snorlax to disrupt your opponent. But because Red Signal was so strong, it was played to a top 32 finish at the biggest event in Europe, ECC. So from those massive highs that Genesect EX was on, unfortunately, they go crashing down. As unfortunately for Genesect, the next card in Legendary Treasures was Bulk. This Genesect promo from Generations was Bulk. And there was a Genesect in Vivid Voltage, which was also Bulk. There was also a couple of red Genesect promo cards which were again Bulk. This Genesect EX from Fates Collide, however, did see some play. This Genesect EX's Rapid Blaster attack comboed extremely well with Bronzong's Metal Link's ability, which would allow you to get 1 metal energy from the discard pile and attach it to your bench Pokemon any way you like. And since the magic number was 180 HP at the time, only 4 energy was needed for Genesect EX to reach some O code. Easily achievable with a combination of Bronzong's Metal Links and Max Elixirs too, the latter of which would let you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and attach 1 basic energy you find there to one of your benched basic Pokemon. And it was Rapid Blaster that was the easy damage dealing backbone of Gustavo Wilder's top 8 Worlds 2016 deck, which played a medley of other attackers such as Aegislash EX and even Bronzong Break 2. Not a bad little finish, eh? Top 8 Worlds. But this Genesect EX also had an ability, Drive Change, which would allow you to return a tool card attached to this Pokemon back to your hand. A bit like Shopping Center for newer players. This would allow you to preemptively attach tools and save them for later use. In a format with Professor Sycamore, this could be extremely helpful if you have drawn into your tools that you want in the late game, in the early game. This made Genesect the best metal type EX for Rainbow Force Xerneas to use. Since Xerneas needed as many different types on the bench as possible, the deck saw a ton of different EXs played, all with useful abilities, such as Flygon EX, Volcanion EX, and Genesect EX2. Genesect would allow the Xerneas player to attach EXP shares or float stones preemptively and use them later on. Pretty helpful. But this Genesect EX's of a big finish wasn't when it was paired with Xerneas, however. It was when it was paired with Silvally GX. You see, at the London International Championships 2016, Gardevoir GX was the big deck on the block, and people were sick of it. So one of the best counter decks was Silvally Metals. This utilised Silvally GX's turbo drive to power up attackers, such as Celesteela, Registeel, or even our best new friend Genesect EX2. Although its ability would again come in super useful here, as Silvally GX had an ability where it would change type depending on what tool card was attached to it. This meant if you was unsure if you would need your fighting memory at the time, for example, you could attach it on Genesect and just leave it there. And then if you did need it, you could just return it straight back to your hand and attach it to your Silvally. So just how effective was this deck? Well, it got second place at the hands of Zachary Krekler at the helm, and it was joined with another one in top 16 also. A fantastic showing at the biggest event in Europe. But that was it for Genesect GX, unfortunately. A fairly successful one all things considered, but not quite the height of its black and white counterpart. But it did have some high event finishes at Worlds and EUIC too. The next Genesect card, Genesect GX, wouldn't enjoy such success. Genesect GX was in the Lost Thunder expansion, a set which had some crazy cards like Bucephalon GX, Alolan Ninetales GX and Gramble. Genesect GX, however, wasn't really a card many people would be clambering themselves to get. Its attack Burst Shot was straight up laughable, as was its GX attack Break Buster. The only reason you would ever consider playing this card was solely for its ability Double Drive. Double Drive allowed you to have two cards attached to it at one time. This could be exploited mainly in two different ways. The first way was to attach a ton of tools to make this dual blade tool drop attack do a ton of damage. A playstyle that was fairly successful, as it did see a top 64 placement at the biggest event of the year, NAIC in Columbus. The other use was to slam two Metal Frying Pan to Genesect. This would leave you with a monstrous minus 60 damage reduction and no weakness, making Genesect GX a perfect Acerola or Max Potion abuser, which again was very successful as it got a top 64 placement at another international championships, but this time it was the Latin American one. So two top 64s at two internationals. Not too shabby considering this is one of the worst Genesect cards we have to look at today. And it's a kind of similar level of success for the next Genesect card we have to look at. Genesect from Unbroken Bonds, however, was a little bit more niche. Its ability gave it free retreat most of the time, which is great, but at a time where Stellar Wish and a skateboard did exist, you would almost always want to go with the latter option. Still kinda helpful though. Its attack, however, did have some niche uses. Splitting Beam did 30 to the active and 30 to two of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This would allow for pressure on evolving basics such as Inkay and Ditto, while also allowing you to pick up Miss KOs as well, all while leaving a one prizer in the active no less. And a deck like Malamar, which could make use of Distortion Door, Esper, Sky Scorching Light, and even Spell Tag, had a ton of ways to manipulate bench damage. And Timothy Tazang actually had a copy of Genesect in his Ultra Mani list for the 2019 World Championships, which he piloted all the way to a day 2 finish. And when this Genesect was slammed into ADPization, the extra 30 damage from Ultra Creation meant that this Genesect doing 60 to the active was a perfect number for KOing evolving Pokemon while also taking an extra prize card at the same time. And the bench damage would allow you to pick up Miss KOs from Zacian's Brave Blade if Vitality Band was missed. This strategy came in useful for Kaito, as his ADPization deck took him all the way to a top 16 finish at a Champions League event in Aichi, which had over 1,300 players. And at a Champions League event Chibi, Genesect also got to a second place finish, but this time it was paired with Lucario Melmetal in a stall archetype, similar to the LAIC deck we looked at earlier, where you would aim to tank as much damage as possible and then use Lusamine, Acerola and Max Potion Loop to continuously heal off that damage and stall your opponent out until you win. So all things considered, quite a few high finishes for a card that looks like honestly bulk at face value. The next Genesect we have to look at, while it might be a very fun collector's card, actually did have a good finish as well. Shining Legends saw Genesect get a cool new red card, which on face value looks a little bit lackluster. Gaia Blaster did 50 plus 20 for each grass energy attached to the Shining Genesect. This on face value would take way too many energy cards for it to be effective. However, when paired with Jungle Totem Venusaur, those grass energies would now count for 40 damage for each one attached. Now we're getting somewhere. This funny little combo wasn't just a meme, as it actually got to 10th place at Memphis Regionals, with a combination of Lurantis GX, Max Elixirs and Wishful Baton letting those Genesects pop off pretty fast, and pretty well. The next Genesect card though, oh boy, this has the potential to give the old Genesect EX a run for its money. As soon as Fusion Strike was released, the community knew instantly there was going to be a new best deck in format on the block, and it was going to be one that would stick around for a long time. And Genesect V was the beating heart of this deck. Genesect V's Fusion Strike system ability allowed you to draw up to the amount of Fusion Strike Pokemon you have in play. This meant if you had 0 cards in your hand and 6 Fusion Strike Pokemon in play, you could draw 6 cards. Honestly, crazy. Especially when you consider you could do this up to 4 times a turn. You can draw your deck at an extremely fast rate. This meant you could pretty much have a good shot of drawing what you needed when you needed it. So combo pieces like Choice Belt, UV Maxes or Power Tablets were never really too far away, and the last of which is extremely relevant since Power Tablets let your Fusion Strike Pokemon do an extra 30 damage this turn. This means you have the potential to remove anything from play with one attack, and that attack normally came from Genesect V2 as its Techno Blast did 210 damage. So with one Choice Belt or Power Tablet, you were KOing evolving Vs easily. However, that attack cost does look a little bit gnarly, right? How are we going to use it consistently? Sure, Metal Sorcerer exists, but that's asking a lot, especially when you have 190 HP yourself. Well, luckily for Genesect V, he wouldn't have to find himself in the active too often since Mew VMAX was the main attacker. For a single double turbo energy attachment, you could use the attack Cross Fusion Strike, which allowed you to use any one of your Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks as this attack. This meant a much beefier 310 HP Pokemon with Free Retreat could be using Techno Blast for a much better energy cost too. This let Genesect V do what Genesect V does best, just draw cards. And this deck instantly started taking names as soon as competitive play was resumed, with 4 in the top 8 of Brisbane Regional, where the very talented Natalie Miller at the helm was able to take it all home. And ever since that event back in 2022, this deck has been a force to be reckoned with, always never being worse than a top 3 deck in format. Now I can't go through all the finishes Mew Genesect has had, because this video would honestly get close to an hour long, but here are some of the main ones. 3rd place Liverpool Regionals, 2nd place Sao Paulo Regionals, 4th place EUIC, 3rd place Indianapolis, 4th place Bilbao, 2nd place Duranville, 4th and 5th Secaucus, 4th place Perth, 2nd, 3rd, 6th and 7th at Bremen, 7th and 8th at Vancouver, and 1st place Santiago. It did even get a top 8 placement at the 2022 World Championships in London via Andre Chiasson. And honestly, it hasn't slowed down since, forcing creatures to print many a Mew counter because if it was left unchecked, it would rule the format. The first one up was Mightyena, which would OHKO a Mew VMAX for 0 energy via its ability. This, however, wasn't very good, and it wasn't widely adopted outside of Zoroark box decks. Darkrai V-Star and Hisuian Samurott are up next, both of which would OHKO Mew VMAX via weakness. These, however, proved not very good enough against the rest of the field and saw little to no play, and in some circumstances Mew could even beat them, with double Meloetta proving difficult for them to deal with. Drapion V was the next counter up, and this one, to be fair, has been a massive thorn in the side of Mew Genesect decks, since it is a basic Pokemon which can attack for 0 energy and can OHKO a Mew VMAX, proving to be extremely splashable. and they can even take extra prize cards too against Mew VMAX via Sky Seal Stone, meaning you can take 4 prize cards in one attack. Absolutely Danny Dyer. But even under those harsh circumstances, Mew VMAX can still have a defense via Path to the Peak, shutting down Drapions ability Wild Style, meaning it's not quite an auto win if you play against it. And make no mistake about it, Genesect V is the beating heart of this deck. Without it, Mew VMAX could not function, proving so troubling creatures had to hard counter it 4 times to keep it in check. That's how dominant Genesect V really is. But with that, we are now at the present day, so my job here is done. I have made the case for Genesect being the strongest Pokemon of all time. What do you think? Is Genesect's highest of highs good enough for it to claim the top spot? Let me know in the comments. And also leave in the comments what Pokemon you want to see covered. The Pokemon that gets the most votes in the comments that isn't already in my top 10 lineup will get a case made by yours truly. So show your favourite Pokemon down there in the comments some love, and it might just get an episode here on this series. If you like the video and subscribe to keep an eye out for the next EP. Thank you so much for your time, it means the world to me.